Hey friends, I hope you're doing well. Amy and I moved to Nashville 16 years ago today, and by doing that, it set in motion this entirely different life that led to a lot of things that I couldn't have foreseen happening. And one of those led to me sitting here talking to you guys on Saturday mornings and throughout the week, and the things I share on this channel. I never ever would have thought that I would be doing anything like this, but it's all because we decided to move. And we talked about maybe moving. I was happy where I was. I was happy in Indianapolis. And I'm a firm believer that, writing great songs and making lasting art has nothing to do with your zip code. You can do that anywhere. Either you are the type of person that will and can, or you're not. And moving or whatever won't change any of that. So I kind of felt that way and didn't think it had anything to do with where I was. But Amy was a little more, well, we ought to move somewhere. There might be more opportunity somewhere else. And I understood that, but I didn't think much of it. Thought maybe Austin, but that didn't happen. Life probably would have been better for me in some ways in Austin. And I've always loved Austin, but we didn't do that. But I had been spending a lot of time in Nashville, and I had a lot of friends there. I'd go down. I never once thought about moving there, but I remember I had one particularly really great week, and I think it was October. It was really nice weather, so it wasn't hot as hell, and I was just hanging out with a lot of cool, fun people, people I liked. And I remember going to see BR 549 at the Mercy Lounge, and just a really, really fun time. And I always liked those guys, and just a really fun time. And I went outside after the show, and I'm just standing out in the parking lot, and I called Amy, and I said to her these immortal words. I was just talking about the fun I'd had. And I said, for the first time ever, I can understand why people move here. And I didn't realize, but that's all she had to hear. And by the time I got home, she had everything in motion. It's a joke that we tell. She had everything in motion. And so anyway, when we decided to move, we put our house up for sale in Indianapolis. And we were trying to find a house in East Nashville. And it was already expensive. It's nothing like it is today, but it was hard. It was a really hot neighborhood where people were moving in all the time, and it was hard to find a house to buy. And the first week our house was up for sale, we had an offer for the amount of money we wanted, and our realtor advised us to hold out, that we could do better than that. We didn't get another offer for 10 months, and you can imagine how crazy that was. 10 months on the market trying to sell our house here. And then we sold it, and then we had to find something immediately. And Amy and I are driving down there looking at houses, and it seemed like there were things we wanted in a house, and to get all of those things, we just kind of needed 20 grand more than we could spend. $20,000 would solve all our problems, and we just didn't have it. We couldn't get it approved for that or whatever. We were just having the hardest time. And I remember we went and had breakfast at the Knife and Fork one day, and saw Elizabeth Cook and Tim Carroll there having breakfast, and they came over, and they would later joke about how shell-shocked we looked. We had all these printed out papers of houses and stuff on the table we were looking at, and they're like, you guys were in hell trying to find a house. But we ended up finding a place and made an offer. So our house, we would close on our house in Indianapolis like the same day, and when we would end up closing on the house in Nashville. So we ended up loading everything into this truck, and we found out the morning that we were supposed to leave, our realtor in Nashville said there was paperwork problems, and we couldn't close on our house for another day. Well, it was some kind of a holiday weekend, and that would make it to where we had like 4 days with nowhere to stay in Nashville. And I'm on the phone. I remember being inside the truck. I had my clamshell phone. I remember being inside this truck as I was loading stuff into the back of it, just telling this realtor, is like, you need to tell me, can you work this out or not? Because I'll walk away from this and we'll just rent an apartment somewhere and I'll put everything in storage. We need to, we had no extra money. Everything was just shoestring budget and barely working out. And remember, we loaded everything out of the house into the truck, and the very last thing that remained in our house was a couch in the basement that the people that were buying it agreed to keep, so we didn't have to carry it out of the basement. We were looking for our 2 cats. It's McKenzie and Baby. And I talked about Babs, Baby, a few weeks ago. She's the cat that I found in Petersburg, Illinois, on Edgar Lee Masters' tombstone. And we're looking for them. We're like, where are the cats at? We can't find them. And we finally go down in the basement, and they're sitting on that couch because it's the only thing that remains that's ours. So they went down there, and they're sitting on that couch. The house is empty. And it was just, it kind of like, our heart was kind of breaking right there. And I remember Amy and I just staying in there hugging, like 8 years in this house. It was kind of a hard thing to walk away from it, but we did. And we had my cousin Jesse helping out. He was like my brother growing up, and Amy's brother Tracy helping out, and they were huge helps moving. But we started driving south, and somewhere around Louisville, I think in southern Indiana, we had an old Volvo station wagon, and it just died. Amy was driving it. It just died. And we're like, oh my goodness. And we couldn't get it started. So we had to drive this 26-foot truck into Louisville to a U-Haul place and rent one of those tow-behind trailers where you could tow a car, and it would just, you put the front wheels up on it and put it in neutral and, like that. It took forever. We got that trailer, and we ended up going back to where the car was. So me and Tracy and Jesse are pushing. We're lucky that I got a little sun flare, don't I? We were lucky that we were on the kind of going downhill, but we had to put the station wagon, in neutral, roll it downhill so that the front wheels could jump up onto this trailer. And we failed like the first 5 or 6 tries. We couldn't get enough momentum to make the thing roll up on there. And we finally got that, but it took over an hour to do that. And we're having a hard time at this point trying to, rally the troops in any way. And so we got down to Nashville, and when we got there, we didn't have anywhere to be because we couldn't get into the house. And so we're pulling this 26-foot box truck with everything we own in it. Sorry for that sun flare. It probably looks kind of cool. But with everything that we own in it, and pulling this Volvo station wagon, some old station wagon behind it. So the whole thing's like 45 feet long. And I ended up getting a hotel over by Trinity Lane, which anybody that knows Nashville knows that's not the nicest damn place. And I left Amy and Jesse and her brother Tracy and the dog there, and they wouldn't let me stay there because they didn't want me to take up so many parking spots. It was too big to take up spots in the, So I'm driving around looking for somewhere to park this. And I finally ended up at the truck stop downtown by the stadium. There's an old truck stop. Somebody told me that it just recently got torn down. But I parked there. It wasn't very nice right then. And I slept. My very first night as a Nashville resident, I spent sleeping in the cab of this box truck with everything we owned in it, trying to protect it or whatever, with 2 cats and a litter box. And the windows cracked, so the litter box smell wasn't as bad as it actually was. And so all night long, I'm being awakened by crackheads and prostitutes knocking on the windows. Hey, wanting to either bum change or proposition me or whatever. And I've joked many, many times that it sucked, but it felt nice to be wanted in Nashville. That was my joke. The next morning, I woke up and there was a Titans game the next day, so they kicked me out of there. I couldn't park because they were going to make money parking cars for the Titans game, football. So I had to get out and then waste an hour and a half until Amy finally came down there. And she didn't have a cell phone, so it was hard to coordinate everything. My buddy Scott Ballantyne, who was a dear friend from Indianapolis, he lived in Nashville right then, and he let Amy stay there for a couple days. And so did I stay there too? I don't remember. Maybe we got a hotel. I don't remember from there. We were trying to find somewhere to take the cats, and we went to a shelter, somebody to house where we pay them a pet sitter where they could stay there. So we go and ask if they could take in the cats for a couple days. I'd never ever done that, leave cats somewhere. It was kind of scary to do it. And they're like, no, it'll be fine. And then they started asking us for we had to have these records of shots. And we're like, what are you talking about? And they're like, well, you have to have, for us to be able to legally take them in, they have to have shots in Tennessee. And our cats didn't have that. They had them in Indiana, and Amy's like, I should say this, throughout the entire thing, Amy's about ready to just break down crying at all times. And I remember I had this speech that I gave her of a very kind, gentle speech. I'm like, Amy, we're in the middle of it, and we're fighting, and we need to keep our head and stay strong. We can cry when this is over. It's easy for me to say. I'm not a crier, never have been. And but I was like, let's keep fighting. We're in the middle of this. We got to throw punches, and we can't cower and start crying and all of that. We got to deal with it. And she's like, you're right. And just talking like that helped a lot. But she's about to lose it when we're in there. And this woman who worked there was really nice. And she said, I live right down the street. Your cats can stay with me. If we explained the problem we're having, we couldn't get into our house. We haven't closed on it yet. And she took the cats in. And so the day comes when we're supposed to close on the house. We're going to go down to Franklin to close on the house. Then we're going to go get the cats. And then we're going to go to the house and move all the stuff in. We're still driving this truck pulling a Volvo station wagon around everywhere. And sounds like I'm doing a Volvo ad, except for it's broken down. And we get a call in the morning from the lady. She's like, can you come and get your cats now? There's a problem. And we're like, what's the problem? She's like, well, can you just come? And we're all scared, oh my God, what's the matter? And we get there, and she says, come in here. And she takes us into the kitchen, and she opens the shut kitchen cabinet, and one of our cats is in the cabinet. And she's like, I don't know how she got there, but she won't come out of the cabinet. And we're like, come on, Babs. And she came out for me. And we're like, where's McKenzie? And then the woman takes me into the bathroom and says, you see that little hole behind the tub? And I'm like, yeah. She crawled in there last night, and she hasn't come out since. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm laying down on a stranger's bathroom floor. We're supposed to close on the house in an hour on the opposite side of town. I'm laying down, looking back into the darkness of this little hole behind a bathtub and trying to reach my hand in. And I'm like, McKenzie, come on. And there's nothing. And finally I hear this real faint meowing. And I'm like, come on, K-Bear, come on, McKenzie. And it's getting a little bit more, and reached my hand way back in there, and I'm just feeling around, and finally I felt something furry. And I just kind of grabbed a big hunk of fur and just pulled her out of there. And I kind of held her, and I'm like, all right, Amy, let's go. And we went out to the car, and we went down to Franklin, closed on the house. We drove back to the house, walked in, and my friend Nora and then Scott came up and helped us unload the truck. And we walked in. I turned on the air conditioner because it was kind of hot. Heard this unbelievably loud blower, unbelievably loud. We never heard this when we came to look at the house because the blower wasn't on, but it was situated by the living room, and there's a vent there. And we would later find out that the blower's just right there, and there's no way to make it quieter. So for 12 years, we heard that blower really loud. And we got all in, settled in, went upstairs, and we're laying in bed, and we're just about to fall asleep. And we're like, well, we're Nashville residents. We live in Nashville, you know, and we're kind of just easy. I mean, it was such a terrible, just sitting there, and then we heard this really, really loud train whistle. And we're like, what in the hell? It was really loud train whistle going off. And it turns out we lived pretty close to the railroad tracks. It didn't seem like it. It seemed like it was almost a mile away, but it was really loud. And then I looked over to Amy, and I'm like, it's all right, you can cry now. And she just started bawling and bawling and bawling. And the next morning, we went outside, and our neighbor was standing at the fence, and we went over to introduce ourselves, and she was great. I mean, she was really great, and we started talking to her, and like, she was an artist. She was a visual artist. Her wife was a professor at Vandy. Really nice people. And after talking for a little bit, I was just like, I just want you to know you're exactly who we hoped we would move in next door to. You know, really nice people. And she's like, well, what's your last name? And she knew that it was Amy and Otis. And I said, Otis Gibbs. And she's like, I mean, she looked like she'd seen a ghost. She's like, oh my God. And I'm like, what? You know, and she says, you're never going to believe this, but the woman who lived in our house, which I would later call Mount Rinraw, the woman who lived in that house for decades was, her name was Amy Gibbs. And I mean, she's like looking all weird and scared. She's like, you got to stay here. I got something I got to give you. And she runs back in the house. When the woman died, when Amy Gibbs died, a lot of her stuff just got thrown away. Somebody came and cleaned out the house, and they put boxes of stuff out on the street for the trash. Our neighbor who we were talking to went out and went through a lot of it, and she found old photographs. She was thinking whoever moves in here would probably be interested in this, and found photographs of the house in the 60s and in the 70s. There was like 5 inches of snow in the backyard in Nashville, like in the 70s. And she gave us these pictures, and one of them was a really, really nice picture of Amy Gibbs. And we hung it up in the living room in the house and left it there the entire time. So it's like, it's her house. You know, she'll always be there, which was a strange thing. And another strange twist was when we ended up moving. We moved 12 years later, back to the day that we moved out. It was actually the same day, October 6th, as when we moved in, but we didn't know that until we were already gone, and we kind of realized that, which really strange coincidences. And that's all it is coincidence, but it's strange and interesting to me. So the first day, maybe it was the second day, I get a phone call from Chuck Mead, and he's like, hey, Otis, there's a party tonight that I think you're going to want to go to. Why don't you come on over? He gives me the address. Like, why don't you come on over? And I believe Tim Carroll also sent out the word and the invite. And we're like, all right, we'll go. So when we got there, it was in a house next to Peter Cooper's house. And I believe this was the first time I met Peter Cooper, and he was extremely nice to us, like extremely. Later became, our friend, but this was the first time we met him, and he, I remember it was a party and there was a band set up on a front porch, and there were like 20 or 30 people in the front yard in lawn chairs watching this band play on the porch is what the party was. This is just in a neighborhood in East Nashville. The band was Cowboy Jack Clement, W.S. Holland, the only drummer Johnny Cash ever had, the guy that played on Blue Suede Shoes, with Carl Perkins. He was the drummer. Like Chuck Mead was in the band, Tim Carroll was in the band, Peter Cooper, I think, was playing bass. I'm trying to remember everybody. I think maybe Eric Brace was in the band, I can't remember. I have all this written down. I've mentioned this part of the story before, but we're just sitting here watching Cowboy Jack play on somebody's porch in East Nashville, and I remember Peter asked me, he's like, you want to come up and play a few songs, Otis? It was like when they were in between break. And I said, man, I think following Cowboy Jack would be a pretty bad career move, but joking. And he laughed and he says, Otis, you're in East Nashville now. There's no more career moves left. Which I thought was freaking great. And so as we're there, I'm remembering seeing this video of Todd Snyder driving around East Nashville in a convertible in the snow, and the whole thing is come to East Nashville, and he's saying, I moved here because this is where, he said, this is where Billy Joe Shaver would have been. This is where, Guy Clark lived. The picture that you see of Guy Clark and Townes Van Zandt and Susanna standing on a porch, and Townes has a fiddle. That's in East Nashville. That was like a half a mile from our house. That was where Guy lived back then. But in this video of Todd Snyder, he's just being Todd and being funny as all hell. And Peter Cooper was in there with him. And I knew that Peter was the writer for the Tennessean, like the music editor. And I just remember watching the video thinking, what the hell, man? The guy that has that gig is hanging out with Todd Snyder? What kind of town is this? And it looked like the sort of place that it looked like me and my friends in Broad Ripple area of Indianapolis, except for it was somewhere else. And it was, I don't know, it was all of these people like Cowboy Jack and stuff like that coming through. And I just remember thinking, that's the coolest damn thing ever. And then here I am at that party. I later told Todd Snyder that you can still find that video on YouTube, and there's like 1,000 views. But I say it's like that Velvet Underground album. Excuse me. It only sold 1,000 copies, but every single person that got a copy started a band. And there's that quote. I say that video had 1,000 views, but every single one of them moved to East Nashville. And but we got home that night after just this crazy fun party of nice people and good times, and we kind of sat back and we're like, wow, this is what our life is. What a beautiful, beautiful place. This is amazing. And that's what life was. And things changed over the years and all of that, but I'll always have that memory. I probably left out a couple things. I think one thing I might have left out was when the cat peed all over herself in the car, and how bad that smelled, and how we had to clean that up somewhere in the move. And that's something I forgot. I'd rather forget. But I don't know, that's a good place to leave it. If we sometimes talk about stuff like this on Patreon or with the channel members, and if you think you might dig that, why don't you come hang out with us there? And if not, I will see you guys somewhere down the road. Much love to you.